Hello, everybody. Nice to welcome everybody on this somewhat gloomy early February afternoon. And I have a wonderful guest that will talk to us about how to make really good training stand out in the eyes of corporate buyers. Welcome, Peter. This is Peter Evans from the Training Marketplace with an amazing wealth of experience on corporate training. So we get many years of experience distilled into just a few chats. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about why this matters in today's marketplace, what is important for trainers generally, how to structure what to do for corporate clients to make your training visible and valuable to them. We will then talk a little bit about the how. So Peter's going to talk about the why and the important underlying principles and what's in the mind of corporate trainers. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanics on the how. And then at the very end, we will have some questions. This webinar is recorded. So if you're watching the recording, there are contact details at the very end. We'd love to talk to you and we'd love to have your input and your questions. And we are now going to take it away. The only thing that I wanted to say is that the Training Marketplace and OpenCPD have partnered up in this because the Training Marketplace is the right place, and Peter will talk about, is the right place for corporate trainers to be found. It's a fantastic tool to market your training, put it out there, very easy to interact with corporate buyers. And of course, you want to be able to provide the evidence of that wonderful quality of training. This is where OpenCPD comes in. And this is why we're so pleased to partner with the Training Marketplace to bring you this webinar today. So over to you, Peter. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, or your wealth of experience, and what does it actually mean in today's marketplace?
Thank you very much indeed, Marta. Lovely introduction. So let me just give you a potted history. You can see probably this isn't my first rodeo. I've been around training for some time. I started as an investment banker many years ago and discovered that basically investment bankers in those days got really bad training. And so it just seemed like a good idea to set up a company to train investment bankers in the skills they needed to do their jobs. So I set up a company and it grew. So over the years, from the late 90s to 2013, we grew to have 4 offices, one in London, one in New York, one in Dubai, and one in Singapore. We employed at that time about 80 full-time trainers and trained most of the world's financial institutions. So if you like, from the training side of it, that's my pedigree on the providers. And what you find is that when someone buys your company, so our company was acquired by the Fitch Group, the ratings agency, they take you on and they have to find something for you to do. You previously run your company, you owned it. And so they found a few things for me to do. And one of them was to actually be part of the internal sort of training team for Fitch. So the point of this is that I got to see the training buyer perspective as well as the training provider perspective. So looking at it from both sides of it. And what I want to do today really is focus on that training buyer part, because if we're training providers, really to do our job properly, what we need to know is what are the motivations, what makes our clients tick. And I suppose we could start, and I've done another webinar on that, on who is our client, who's a training buyer. Is it the learner? Is it the line manager? Is it the L&D department, HR, procurement? There's a lot of possibilities And today, again, just so that we can focus it, I'm going to look at this very much from the perspective of the training buyer being the L&D, the internal L&D team there. And that is where it brings me to my first slide. So hopefully that's a sensible introduction. We're now in the position of internal L&D buyer at an organization. Could be an SME, could be a large organization. What are they really looking at? Well, there's lots of detail that we'll get into, but if you distill it into 3 things that matter to them, it's the quality of the training, and I'll explore a little bit more about what that means. It's the cost of the training, the price, and when you can do it. And I think as a training provider, it's important to look at these 3 dynamics. And what I always used to say to the training team at my previous organization, Fitch Group, is as a training provider, you have to give your buyer, that L&D department, 2 out of the 3. And what does that mean? Well, let's say they want the best quality trainer that you can deliver. They want that high quality trainer, and they want her tomorrow. That's fine, but it's going to cost them quite a lot of money. Yeah. So yeah, we can do it, but the price is going to be determined by us. And that's a fair balance. You can take it the other way around. Let's say they want the highest quality trainer that you've got, and they want the lowest price that you can deliver. That brings us to the 3rd part of the triangle. We decide when that can happen. And, you take to the 3rd one and it becomes obvious. They say, right, we want the lowest price you can do, Peter. We want it tomorrow. We're going to say, well, that's what's available. So the point really, on the other slides, we'll go into a lot of these things in more detail, but I think if we always bring it back to this, as the training provider, you're looking at the buyer and thinking, right, which of the 2 are they going to take and which is really in my control? If you give all 3, you're not going to last too long. So I think you'll be out of business. And if you demand all 3, you're going to find it a lot harder to get clients. So client gets 2, you get 1 generally. So if we move to I don't know, Marta, have you got any comments on that, whether that resonates with your business?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's actually very true in many businesses, but I think in corporate sales, we don't tend not to think about it like that. So I think this is really helpful.
So let's take, I did a paper, by the way, so I'll make this paper available to everyone afterwards. I'll share that with Marta. And in the paper, I looked at the 10 main pain points for corporate training buyers. And what I've done, because you can only listen to so much of me on a podcast or at a webinar, I've taken just a few of those pain points to share today. So the first one is we've got skill gap and we need to deal with that now. So here it's pretty obvious your client's in charge of the time, right? So at the end of the day, these people need to have these skills now. And this is very, very relevant today. They're looking for something that can be rolled out. There isn't a lot of time for discovery. Training providers, and I've been there, love to do discovery, talk about what you want and whatever, explore it. But these are immediate problems. And I'll give you an example. At the moment, I think we're all aware that there is a crisis in the graduate training world. So the large institutions, whether they're consulting firms, accounting firms, professional services firms, are replacing entry-level jobs with AI. Now, we don't know how long that's going to last, and we don't know exactly what the results are going to be, but where you previously had an analyst going into a large global consulting firm, doing a lot of data, looking at a lot of analysis for companies and competitor analysis and the rest of it, open source AI, never mind their own large language models, can do it in seconds. That means that the new graduates coming in and the people above them are much more in a tower than a pyramid. What does that actually mean for the skills? Well, what it means is whilst they can pick up the technical skills very quickly, they're going to need the people skills a lot faster, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to be talking to the consulting firms, the accounting firms' clients at a much earlier stage in their development than was previously seen. And so what we're seeing is those firms coming to us saying, right, we need that behavioural skill type, what we used to call the softer skills, which were reserved previously for managers and maybe above, now coming in at the associate analyst level. And we need them now because we can't have them, going to a client fresh out of university and just getting the whole thing wrong. So that's my example really of saying, look, we need it, and we need it now. Again, I'll just take a quick pause there. And Marta, is that, again, anything that you've seen from your CPD side on that?
Oh, very much. And I think it's interesting that we are talking about skills all the time. So one of the things we have very early identified when we were developing OpenCPD is surfacing the specific skills. So often training will have amazing content. They will have amazing, sometimes catchy titles or not catchy titles or very technical titles. But actually and this is our assumption, but I think you just confirmed it. What people need is specific skills, units, and ideally the more understandable and visible and clearer those units are articulated, the easier it is for, I guess, a corporate buyer or an L&D department to actually understand and slot in the training where they need to do. So we spend a lot of time talking about skills. We have a couple of tools for that. One of the things that is very, very new, and we love it, and we are promoting to a client, is Skills England has published a catalog, really the world, all the skills and everything. So we like that, and we don't tell training providers that that's what they have to have, but if they want to, we're quite happy to help them map it and look it up. So yes, skills is the unit of training that everybody seems to be talking about.
So absolutely. And it's, as I said, the one takeaway from both of those, it's something that's got to be ready now, and the demand is there. Next slide. I apologize if you're a training provider and you go, oh, Peter, not again, ROI. I've been in the business for 35 years, and I've seen one paper on measuring ROI in training. I must have seen 3 million. And quite often there's a lot of words and not a lot of output from the people looking at doing it. But you can't ignore it. And what we're seeing, again, from our training buyers is how can we actually demonstrate that your training has had an impact? And, this is the quality side of that triangle. There are lots of surveys. One I love is it just shows that it says 88% of corporate training is not used when people leave the training environment and go back to the workplace. So that means, it's 12% or so that is actually used.
Actually 6.
Yeah. And what I would, again, I'm happy to share some of this with you, but I've discovered recently there's a company in the US training magazine. We work very closely with them. And every year they have the Apex Awards. Now, the Apex Awards are designed for internal learning and development departments at large organizations. And it's a really stringent and rigorous award. But what it's for is for those training departments that can show what the ROI on the actual business has been of the training. And it, you know, is it increased revenue, reduced costs, lower headcount turnover, so less recruitment costs or whatever. And there are a series of those, what's the word? Just effectively measurements, if you like. There's a better word for it out there, but I'm going to use that term for all of those things. And what I will do here, I think, is if anyone's interested in that, Laurie, the editor, has said that, you know, I can share some of the criteria there, and you can see what the big companies, if you like, are doing to measure the impact of their internal learning and development on their business. What's that mean for you as a smaller training provider? Well, it means that you can kind of follow that and say, look, if it's good enough for the internal team at SmithKline or at Google or whatever, then we can take that and say, right, our training needs to actually show that it can move the dial on the business. And it's an old cliche, but, you know, there are ways of measuring that. So I don't think, you know, we can get away and say these days the reviews, what we used to call the happy sheets at the end of the training, you know, the trainer made us laugh and it was all great, is good enough. You have to work hard at it. And with the tools on AI and everything these days, it is easier for you to do, to actually go in to that pitch with the client, not sort of saying how great you are, but saying, right, what difference is this going to make on your business? And just as a final piece on that, I always used to say to our sales team at Fitch, don't necessarily think about your client's business, but think about your client's business. So the end of it, you know, if you're looking at working with an investment bank, who is their client? It might be a large pharmaceuticals firm. And thinking about the impact your training will have on their clients' clients. And that really starts to engage the L&D people, because they can see, right, you know, we can go to the business and say, right, you're going to help your client by doing that, not we're going to help you. So I hope that sort of makes sense to you, Marta. It's, as I say, just in a very clumsy phrase, think about your clients' clients, and you'll be on the right path for ROI.
And I think, again, this is very much in the air at the moment. We at OpenCPD, we like to be kind of, as part of the community, we like to reach out and talk to many different types of experts and providers. And only last week I was talking to somebody who's an expert on precisely that. She's working with large corporates about measurements. Mm-hmm. And we had an excellent conversation, because, again, from a lifetime ago and some other jobs, again, you know, the more specific you get, the easier things there are to measure. And I think it's really important, again, what you just said, and also what we see across the board from our providers, is that the more you can decide and define what training and what outcomes you will deliver, well, that's actually easy to measure them, because if you decided what a good outcome, what a specific outcome is, vague outcomes like happiness are impossible to measure. But if you could say that, you know, and I don't know specific examples, but, you know, I don't know, in a call center kind of situation that, I don't know, mistakes or data issues or whatever will drop as a result of the training. That's a measurable number. So again, being specific, and we support that. We can't make it happen, but we do support that. And also we work with people who can help training providers to if they have that kind of need, we can point them in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And these two things sometimes actually sit on different sides. So this one's like, you know, learner engagement, participation. You can have a highly engaged audience, right? And you can make them laugh. You can make them sort of do various activities together. So at the end of the day, they feel energized and they feel that the whole experience has been a good one. But have you actually moved the dial on the business? So, you have to put these things together. And in a way, it's no good having a fantastic ROI concept if your whole audience goes to sleep, or they just don't finish the e-learning module that you've actually put together because it's too boring. So, I think, again, as a training provider, think about, what turns you off. And, I see people, on our platform, they'll put 5-minute videos together as a, part of what they do. But what you've got to look at and think about is, would you actually sit through that 5 minutes? When was the last time you went to a sort of relatively educational YouTube clip and you watched it from beginning to end? And let's be honest, I'm I'm one of the older generations that probably will do more of that than the people in learning and development now. So, it's thinking about what will grab and capture attention and not going on too long. And, let's make sure I'm not guilty of that in this particular webinar as well. The other thing I'd like to throw out there is, particularly for when you do blended learning and you do some e-learning as part of what you do, is it a good idea or a bad idea to offer some kind of rewards to your customers, i.e. the individual learner, for getting through to the next part of the module? And I don't know, initially I was skeptical on this because, I come from the educational point of view, and it should be enough of in its own right to learn things and have a new skill. But again, this is no promotion on, but there is a company on our platform called Rocket Rewards. They actually work with learners and companies, and they work with externals. So, you can earn a Starbucks, you can earn a, whatever, I won't go through it all. And what they're saying is, actually, it does work. Maybe it's with that generation.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And that's actually what we do. In our own slightly different ways, that's what we do with OpenCPD. So there is good evidence to show across a huge variety of training. And again, rocket learners, what are they called?
Rocket Rewards.
Yeah. Rocket Rewards. So they obviously, that's their business model. So people will retain whatever they learned better. It doesn't matter what it is. Now, an OpenCPD, we would say, actually a shareable digital badge is absolutely the right thing to do, because people, and we get a lot of feedback, which with happy people saying congratulations, thank you, and they can, it's something that it doesn't matter how small a thing it is. It's more than if they didn't get anything, and people like to share it. So for example, with OpenCPD, you get shareable digital badges that go into people's LinkedIn profile, and it's just a tiny bit extra. So I think one of the things that I think both the training marketplace and OpenCPD and actually many other providers are talking about is like, how can you take just a tiny step further? Nobody's going to kind of suddenly shoot to the moon because it's a very competitive place now. There are some amazing offers, amazing value, content, benefits, etc. So how can you make your stand up? How can you go just half a step or a step further? And rewards is one of them.
Yeah. And so, I've come there from the skeptical side, and now I'm in 100% agreement with Marta on that.
Next.
So we've had a quick look through the time. We've had a look at the quality, which we'll come back to at the end. But now we've got budgets and resource constraints, and you as a training provider are always going to come up against this. So we've all been in that position. And there, I was speaking to a training provider from Switzerland today who basically now doesn't work with the US because of the franc to dollar depreciation, and he's not going to change his prices. And he says, we can negotiate, but I'm not going to cut my price. But we all come across the budget of, whether it's from procurement or whether it's L&D themselves, the objection. What can we do about it? Well, I'd give you two main pieces of advice in today's market. First of all, transparency. The buyer side hates the sort of opaque, not knowing how much the whole thing is going to cost at the end. They've got their own objectives, they've got their own KPIs. So, every sort of bespoke trainer that I've met, and I've met a lot, say, well, I don't know, Peter, we're now working with a law firm. We normally work with advertising firms. So we need to do some development time. We need to work out what they do and, all the rest of it. So I can't really price it. Every client's different. And my advice is that these days you're better off doing that. At the end of the day, we advise all the clients on the training marketplace to put their daily rate up. And it can be a range. And it can be different for development days to delivery days, but transparent pricing will win you business. And, it's painful because we all like to negotiate and have the discussion. But in my experience, that's the main piece of advice. And to scope what you do tightly. Don't leave it open-ended. The days of, scope creep and whatever that I remember back in the 90s, early 200s, they've gone. People want to know, right, what is this training package going to cost me? So we are going to do a survey in our L&D professionals group later in the year on what price seems to be reasonable for certain training days in certain verticals, because it is something that a lot of small and medium-sized training providers ask us to say, am I charging too much, Peter? Am I not charging enough? There isn't a lot of transparency in the market, but there needs to be transparency between you and your client, if you see what I mean.
I totally agree. And again, coming back to this specific offers and specific outcomes, and again, I think it is true to say that in any corporate sector, even us consumers, we would expect that at least, and the corporate buyers will understand the value. Your pricing is a reflection of that value. So if you're clear about what value you give, this isn't double glazing. This is what the customer is good for. It's actually what value you're transferring. So what outcomes and how they're measurable. So the more you can articulate that, you don't have to fluff things up too much, other than saying this works, this will be delivered, this is how and this is how your trainees, workforce, and everything. This is the benefits they will get. That's
Yep.
Very straightforward.
Absolutely, and I always leave that one with people that consumers very rarely buy the cheapest parachute on the market.
That is also true. So
it brings me to the last of the slides in this part, and I just wonder whether or not this turns our triangle into a square, because what we're seeing now is that, because really, of the AI, because of micro learning, all of these things, that the day of generic training and box ticking, all right, it's still there. Let's not pretend it's gone away completely. But clients are now saying, no, we want this training to be relevant and personalized. So it needs to actually reflect what our business does. It's no good going in to a law firm with the negotiation skills that you created for a construction company. You need to understand their client base and what they do. And what we say to the clients on the training marketplace is the more niche you are, the more likely you are to be engaged. And they come and they often think, no, you know, Peter, we can do management training, we can do negotiations, we can do sales, we do leadership. We work it down, and those people might say, well, actually, no, what we really specialize is emotional intelligence for leaders in, you know, pharmaceuticals companies. I say, right, get that there, because you will be found now, and the days of the training buyer not getting fired for buying IBM, and I apologize for IBM, my brother-in-law worked for them, but just as they, you know, those have gone, because now, because of the way the internet, the AI is going, large corporations will begin to trust smaller specialist providers, because they can actually see that they make a difference. Whereas the generalist is just coming in and, you know, getting those happy sheets. They're not creating any destruction. You know, they're not destroying the training day, but at the end of it, it's the specialist, the person who understands your business, understands the level they're talking to, that is going to make the difference. And so what we're seeing is, from both sides of it, training companies are becoming more prepared to say, actually, we specialize in this rather than we do everything. And they are the people that are getting hired. So that could be in the quality if I want to keep my triangle, or I could put it as an extra one if I want to actually sort of say, let's turn the triangle into a square. But I'll stop there. What do you think, Marta?
Well, I think, again, it takes it back to specific skills and being able to measure outcomes. And for the way we look at it is relevant, especially because we our clients in OpenCPD are partly in the corporate sector, but often in just kind of general lifelong learning. And what may be important to one profession may not be that relevant to other professions. So I think one of the things that we're finding is, actually we're finding it from the receiving end. So it used to be a little bit of a box ticking exercise, but was that training relevant to that group of people in their professional development? You know, do they actually need those skills, or maybe need some other skills? So again, the more specific, the more clearly defined it is, the easier it is to, and you know, again, small training providers may find that that is not what those group of buyers want. Fine, because it would be easy to say, like, look, we don't want this because we want this other thing. Well, there's going to be a group of buyers that want what you've got, because you can say exactly what it is.
And one of the things I did, sort of wrote a paper with a joint one that was published in a training magazine, which I'm very happy to share, which is all about the concept of micro consortia, which is basically, you know, it sounds like grander than it is. It's 6 or 7, maybe 5 or 6 small training companies coming together to solve a problem for, you know, a large institution, where, you know, in the past they might have taken one big training company who've got a lot of generalists. Here now, with the way that we can do it, put people together with the AI.
Group for a project, this project is maybe for that local authority doing these kind of training, and that one is for a construction company, but it's a slightly different mix. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And you know, you bring in, you have a technical trainer and then a negotiation skills trainer, but the poor old technical trainer is not trying to have to do a bit of negotiation skills.
A bit of marketing,
in the afternoon,
communication, a bit of data protection on the side. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's something, again, if people are interested in, I'll share that. It's a quick read, so please feel free to distribute it.
We definitely will do. Oh, well, thank you very much. I think this was probably the gist of what we wanted to cover today. And I think it's amazing to hear it from you, Peter, and what you see on a training marketplace with all the training providers. And in our experience in OpenCPD, it's actually the same thing coming back. So obviously it's going in that direction, it's percolating up. I am going to wrap up fairly quickly. All I'm just going to say is that we have a few slides here which talk about OpenCPD, and I can talk about OpenCPD to quite a large extent, but I'm not going to do today, because I think what we've taken away today is already we've already shared that knowledge. So what will happen is that we will share these slides. If anybody has any questions, in fact, I'm just going to get to the very end. Here we go. Here are our details. Post the training marketplace. This is how you can get in touch with Peter, and this is how you can get in touch with me. And what we will do is we will record, we will share the recording, share some of the other links that Peter mentioned, and look forward to answering your questions. But this is where the recording ends. Thank you very much. Thank you.